We've got more big updates coming soon to Madden 24, so I'm going to break them down in this video so you can know what's on the way. Now, much like every year of Madden, you should know by now we're going to get a ton of post-launch updates for the game. It's been this way for quite some time now. They do these both to fix bugs and issues with the game, but they also do this to add some new stuff to the game as well. Now, EA's already came out and confirmed some things that they're working on that's going to be in the game shortly, both in terms of fixing a couple bugs with the game, but also in terms of adding some new content to the game that we're still waiting on. The first thing we got to talk about is the new helmets and uniforms that many teams unveiled not that long ago. Now, some of these throwbacks do already exist in Madden 24, which is pretty cool, but that's because they were already in the game as throwback alternates for these teams. So the Tennessee Titans, for example, have had their Oilers unis in the game for some time now, but this year they unveiled that they're going to be wearing them regularly again, so you can already use those in Madden 24. Same with the Jets jersey, same with the Buccaneers and their creamsicles. The Vikings also have their throwbacks in the game. However, they do have to update the helmet because with the re-release of the throwbacks, the Vikings are changing up the helmet a little bit. So there are some things like that EA does have to go in and change, but a good amount of them's already there. However, there are other teams that have unveiled some new uniforms for the first time that they haven't worn that aren't in the game. So for example, you've got the Lions who unveiled their new blue helmet and they're going to wear that with their new alternate uniforms. You've got the Broncos and the Browns that unveiled some white helmets that they're going to wear with alternate uniforms this year. You've got the Colts and their black helmets, and I'm sure there's some other teams as well, but that's just off the top of my head. And if you remember last year, shortly before the NFL season, a bunch of teams unveiled their alternate helmets for the first time then, like the Saints and the Texans and the Panthers and the Jets and so on. And after about the first update or two, all of those were then put into the game. The reason is because they announced it so close to the release of Madden that they couldn't get that in the game in time. And the same thing is going to be true this year. The teams that didn't get their alternate helmets last year and have now unveiled them this year, they're going to come to the game along with some of the other new uniforms that aren't yet added in the first or second title update. So we should be seeing those within the next month. Hey, really quickly, if you're still here at this point of the video and you haven't subscribed yet, you might as well just go ahead and subscribe and join the family because you're pretty much already a part of the family anyway. That way you can stay up to date on all your latest Madden and football gaming news in general, like the NCAA game that's also going to be coming out soon. Trying to hit 1 million subs one day, I definitely need everybody's help and it would be greatly appreciated. The second thing that's likely going to be coming in an update is franchise crossplay. Now, if you remember when they announced crossplay, the one big area of the game that they said wouldn't be crossplay was online CFMs, which a lot of people didn't like to hear that. And honestly, that's one of the areas where crossplay can absolutely be the most beneficial because now it makes it a lot easier to fill leagues. As you know, if you run any type of franchise league, some players don't stick around long. You constantly shuffling people in and out. So if you have a bigger pool of players to choose from, you can run better leagues. Now we have crossplay for online regs head to head. We have it in Superstar Showdown. We have it in Ultimate Team. We don't have it in CFM yet. They said it was coming soon. Now, does that mean it's coming in 24 or next year? That they haven't confirmed, but I would assume based on how they're talking about it that it's definitely going to be a post-launch update for 24. And I think the reason they didn't launch with it in franchise is because after all the issues that franchise had due to servers last year, I think they wanted to make sure that everything was going to run smoothly before implementing crossplay, because let's be honest, when you implement something like crossplay, that does add a different hurdle to the servers where things can go wrong. And instead of having franchise mode be a mess again, I think they wanted to make sure that everything would run smoothly once the game was out and everybody was on the game, make sure that the leagues were going to not crash and everything was going to be stable before they implement something like crossplay. You'd rather have franchise mode working without crossplay and then add it later, as opposed to launching with crossplay and having it be broken. Now that brings us to number 3, which is franchise mode updates. Now franchise has a few bugs right now, luckily nothing too major like last year, but there are a few things that need to be addressed, and EA has already spoken on a few of those. They made a post on their forums a couple days ago and said that they wanted to share a couple of updates with you about what the team has been working on since the early release of Madden 24. One thing they mentioned was draft class downloads. They said, we're aware of an issue affecting the appearance of players when importing custom draft classes. As our team is actively working on a fix, we recommend waiting to download custom draft classes until the issue is resolved in an upcoming title update. And I think this also might just go hand in hand with the fact that if you try to edit players and draft classes in general, it seems to reset. That's a bug right now. So they are working on that. They also spoke on the non-commissioner player editor, where players have shared that the non-commissioners and multi-user league franchises have the ability to edit height, weight, and age of players. That's not an intended function, and the teams are working towards a resolution for a future title update. They also noted that any of those types of edits will show up in the transaction log menu, so if people are trying to do it kind of under the table, you'll be able to find out. And there's also a couple other things. For example, I've heard people saying that the home field advantage toggle is not working, so you can't turn it off, and that's supposed to be a feature for the commissioner tools this year. So things like that are actively being worked worked on and will be updated within the first couple of title updates most likely, so those will be addressed. Now really quickly, I do want to mention that we are once again sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. They've been a huge supporter of the channel. If you like playing fantasy sports, or if you're like me and you like dabbling in the sports betting a little bit, they have a really fun pick'em game where you can put some player props together, and if they hit, you can win some money. Now if you use my promo code RAY, they'll actually double your first deposit up to $100, so you can get $100 free to play around with. Check it out if it's something you're interested in. Number 4 is new equipment updates. Now this has been a consistent thing for many years now in Madden, especially over the last 5 years. They've been finally putting more and more equipment into the game, but honestly there's still quite a bit of things that aren't there that should be there already in my opinion. And this year in particular, at the beginning of the game when it dropped a week ago, if you noticed, it was kind of light in terms of the addition of equipment this year. Usually at the beginning of the year we get a decent amount of new equipment. This year was definitely lighter than in previous years. We only got the Axiom helmet, we got a couple new cleats and a pair of gloves and the baggy sleeves, but that was it, which means we're probably going to get more equipment updates in the post-launch updates this year than in previous years. Now every year, no matter how they launch the game with equipment, they always do at least a couple of updates where they'll add new cleats, new gloves, new helmets and things like that. But since the beginning was so light, we're probably going to see even more of that than usual in the post-launch updates this year. And hopefully eventually we still get the ability to customize the different colors and stuff for this, because it's something they've been saying for years that they want to put in the game. And the fact that it isn't here yet, I'm just kind of confused, because they've been talking about this for at least 3 years at this point. But I think that's why they moved over to the new player editor. If you notice in franchise, it's the career mode editor now. It's not the old kind of dated franchise mode version of that. So I think with them moving over to that, that's a part of the first step to getting more stuff in the game and also getting more customization with it, because in career mode you can edit the colors of certain things, and I think with the new editor and franchise that's going to also be the case very soon. So hopefully that's also something that comes in a post-launch update this year, along with the equipment in general. Number 5, player likeness updates. This is another thing that happens literally every single year in Madden, like clockwork, especially for the young players like rookies and second-year players. They get a decent amount of them sometimes in at the launch of the game, but most of these face scans and player likeness updates will come in the first 2 updates following the game's release. And I think that's because for the rookies especially, they get most of them at the combine, and for the second-year players, if they weren't at the combine the previous year, they try to get as many of those guys in the off season as possible. But you still gotta mold them to the bodies and stuff like that. It's not just as simple as like uploading a picture. So usually a decent amount of them are ready for when the game launches. Like right now there's about like 10 to 15 rookies in the game. There's some other guys that got updated scans like Austin Eckler finally, and Fred Warner and Kyler Murray and things like that. But for the rest of the young players and the rookies, those always come in the first update or 2. So that's something we can definitely expect. And even throughout the year, even after those first couple updates, you'll see some older players finally getting scanned into the game as they go to facilities and they get these scans of new players. So that's something they've been very consistent with over the years. We'll get almost every other update, we'll get a new batch of player likeness. So that's always good, because people want everything to look as realistic as possible. And if people have generic faces, well, it just doesn't look as realistic as possible. Now, if you want to see more in terms of the current new player likeness and equipment updates that we do have for Madden 24, you can check it out in this video right here on the screen.